Hello and welcome, everybody. Welcome to the No Name Music Cast. My name's Tim, and this is
Joy.
And just following on from last week's episode, it's fair to say a physical media deal went down earlier. I'm just putting that out there. It went down.
It is true. I am now the proud owner of I don't even remember what brand. What brand CD player was it, Tim?
It's a Sony Discman.
Wow. I mean, I should have known it's quality. As always, my husband has maybe found out that Tim found a very legendary Sony Discman in not even mint, new condition, because it's still in its package. And Charles has confessed that he will be trading him PayPal money for this later on tonight. So there you go.
Well, anyway, it was going down in Christiansburg earlier. I just wanted to put that out there. I mean, you might be listening to this about a month after the fact, but that's beside the point. It went down.
It's true. I don't even think about that. But anyway, it is now sitting on my kitchen table.
There we go. Fantastic. The transaction has been done.
And my dog was super confused because Finn's like, I always hear that voice coming from the computer. It's real life now.
Yeah. Finn was a little bit excited to see me, it's fair to say.
He was. Well, he was like, I hear that voice a lot, but where's it coming from? All right. On to our first topic at hand, Tim.
Okay, so let's do a quick CD of the week.
Awesome.
We're back in the CD of the week for a while. We'll probably mix it up again some point in the future. But this week's CD of the week is Peter Frampton and Frampton Comes Alive. Now, Joy, have you ever heard of this? Are you familiar with this?
I mean, I'm familiar with Peter Frampton. I don't know if I know that album off the top of my head, but he does have a quality haircut on the front of it. I can tell you that.
Oh, I mean, his hair is almost as legendary as the album. Let me tell you that. So Frampton Comes Alive is, for many people, maybe the greatest live album ever made. Some people will say The Who live at Leeds. Some people will say Thin Lizzy's live in Dangerous. But for many people, they will tell you that Frampton Comes Alive is probably the best live album ever. And I like it so much that not only did I used to have it on the original issue CD many years ago, but recently I repurchased it on this deluxe edition.
Well,
and this is the whole show. And actually, I think there's some tracks on here from a different show. It was recorded in San Francisco. But I mean, the tracks on here are absolutely fantastic. I mean, famously, it's got Show Me the Way on here. And if you ever hear Show Me the Way on classic rock radio, typically it's going to be the live version from Frampton Comes Alive. It's also got Baby I Love Your Way on here, Jumpin' Jack Flash on here, Wind of Change, Doobie Wah. I mean, this is peak Frampton at his very best. And I mean, I've listened to this, without exaggeration, hundreds of times, and I never tire of hearing it.
That's fair. I will say Jumping Jack Flash is one of those songs that gets stuck in my head very easily. Yeah,
and he does a version that's reasonably faithful to the original, though he puts his own sort of Frampton spin on it. And I've heard some of these tracks of Frampton Comes Alive on his later or even earlier studio albums, and the studio cuts are nowhere near as good as what we hear on Frampton Comes Alive.
Is it 2 discs? It looks pretty thick there. Is it a 2-disc CD?
Yeah, it's a 2-disc set. Some of the record companies for a while did these deluxe editions. So you get a book and the discs and all this kind of stuff.
More pictures of his hair.
Yeah, I mean, see, look at him. Look at him in all his glory. Look at him there.
I've never seen anybody who looks like they're trying to make their way to the top in rock and roll like that. It's a quality haircut. He has pretty hair, though. I've seen him before.
The bass player, Stanley Sheldon, I believe in this picture, he's wearing a kimono.
That's information the audience needs to know, Tim. Can we confirm?
Well, the thing is, it was the 70s. I mean, why would you not be wearing a kimono on stage? I mean...
Valid. All right. Well, if you were going to give them one song they have to listen to, not that they have to, but if you could do that, what would it be, Tim?
It would probably be Show Me the Way. That's the one that you would recognize. That's the one which is like the definitive cutoff here. Though, for me, I think his version of Jumpin' Jack Flash on here is really good.
All right, there's your marching orders, everyone.
There we are. So that's our CD of the week, ladies and gentlemen. Okay, so This week, it's my turn to pick the topic. Joy doesn't know what I'm going to pick. And as I did on a few episodes ago, I'm going to come back to the CD of the week pick because it all ties up. Everything just comes together like you wouldn't believe.
I see what he's doing here now.
So Peter Frampton, on Frampton Comes Alive, is famously playing a black Gibson Les Paul guitar. This Gibson Les Paul guitar was thought to be destroyed in a plane crash in South America in 1980. It was a cargo plane with all the band's equipment on it. It crashed, sadly killed a few people. And he assumed that he assumed the guitar was destroyed. And as people died, he's like, well, it's just a guitar. Buy another guitar. He said, the more important thing here is that people lost their lives. I'm not going to start wondering about what happens to pieces of equipment. So, he moved on.
Yeah.
And then in 2011, there were some rumblings in South America in a guitar shop that they found Peter Frampton's guitar. And what had happened, and when the plane had crashed, some scavengers had scavenged a bunch of equipment from the crash. And one of the pieces of equipment that was scavenged was a damaged and fire-damaged black Gibson Les Paul, which was the one on Frampton Comes Alive. Anyhow, some deals were done, and they went backwards and forwards, and I think that some South American government got involved. It was a whole thing. Anyhow, the guitar got back to Peter Frampton, and there's actually a really cool documentary on YouTube showing him getting his guitar back. It's really cool.
Was it like a while after it happened? What's the time frame?
Well, the plane crash was 1980, and he got the guitar back in 2011.
Okay, yeah, that's a while.
Yeah.
So that's a while, guys. Tim may have said that, but I was like, wait, what? How long? Yeah, okay.
So he now calls that guitar Phoenix, F-E-N-I-X, Phoenix. And I think he's on his actual farewell tour at the moment, but he plays Phoenix in concert. And the Gibson custom shop completely rebuilt it because it was in a terrible state. But yeah, he's back there. He's got Phoenix back. So I'm tying this all together because this week's topic is people who play Gibson Les Paul guitars and the music they have made on the Gibson Les Paul.
Fair enough. The big thing I remember about Peter Frampton, well, first of all, I appreciate the Phoenix rising from the ashes reference there, Mr. Frampton. But I didn't know that he plays the title track on Grease, like the Bee Gees song, the Grease, like the opening song. It's actually Peter Frampton that's playing the guitar.
Yeah, he has played on lots of tracks that you wouldn't really know he played on. One of my favorite soundtracks is the soundtrack to Electric Dreams. The title track, Electric Dreams, the guitar on that is played by Peter Frampton too.
Oh, there we go. He's probably one of those people's names on a lot of stuff.
Yeah, I mean, he was in Humble Pie. He had a big solo career, but also he played sessions and he played on all kinds of stuff.
Well, there we go. Well, and wasn't there some associated with him and David Bowie at one point?
I think so.
I mean, wouldn't played in a band together or something.
Yeah, it wouldn't surprise me if they would play together at some point.
All right. Well, what's our next person who plays such a guitar?
Well, what I was going to do before I go into the people who play the guitars and the songs that they've made on those instruments, I was just going to go over a couple of quick facts.
Fair enough.
Now, as many people may not know, they maybe have heard of the Gibson Les Paul, and I'm sure, Joy, you've heard of the Gibson Les Paul guitar.
Yes, very many times, and I can see it in my head whenever someone says that.
Yeah. But not many people know that Les Paul was actually a guy. It's not just a name of an instrument. He was a guy. His real name was Lester William Polfus. He was born in 1915. He died in 2009. I was lucky enough to see Les Paul play in New York City twice. I saw him in 2004, and then I saw him, I think it was 2008. I think it was actually the year before he died I saw him. And he used to do a Monday night residency at the Iridium Club. And, I saw him and he was in his 90s in both occasions, but he could still play a mean guitar. He had a lot of arthritis in his fingers and he couldn't play as fast as he used to, but to see that guy there was absolutely amazing. Now, the interesting thing you need to know about Les Paul, one, he basically invented the solid body electric guitar. It was his idea. Now, Rickenbacker had like Hawaiian lap guitar thing that was made out of a solid piece of wood. But he came up with the idea. What he wanted to do was put guitar strings on a railway sleeper, because he put guitar strings on a railway sleeper and it sounded amazing. But you imagine you can't play a railway sleeper in concert. That's not going to happen. So he built a guitar out of old Epiphone parts called the Log. And that was the prototype for the solid body guitar. And then he got in touch with the Gibson Guitar Company, and they made this solid guitar. And by solid, I mean a lot of, like, an acoustic guitar is an empty box and it resonates. And most electric guitars are just solid pieces of wood. And that was completely his idea.
Okay. That's pretty cool.
Yeah, and the Gibson Les Paul came out in 1952. I mean, Fender had guitars out in the late 40s, but he was prototyping that way before Fender got involved.
Now, what I remember the Starburst thing, like the original Starburst design that he had on a lot of the bodies of his guitars.
Yeah, the original Les Paul was black. He called it a Black Beauty. But yes, the Sunburst, like the 1959 style, where you have like the lighter color in the middle and then the darker color.
Somebody's screaming at me going, "No, Joy, it's not Starburst like the candy."
Yeah, it's Sunburst.
Fine. I just know it's like that very distinct. If you've seen it, you know what I'm talking about. And it's mostly credited with what I understood Les Paul.
Exactly. The other thing you need to know about Les Paul as a person is that he invented multi-track recording. It was his idea. He got bankrolled by Bing Crosby to connect two tape machines together, and he completely came up with the idea of multi-track recording. Everything that now in the modern music industry is based on Les Paul's invention.
I wonder how much Les Paul was worth when he passed away.
I don't know. I met him on both occasions, and I got a picture with Les Paul, in fact. And I don't. He came across as a pretty humble guy. I don't know. I think he pioneered the concept and then everyone ran with it. But certainly the idea of recording multiple tracks of audio at once was Les Paul's invention.
Well, it's not as much as I thought. I Googled it. I gave it a Goog. 10 million when he passed away. At one point, he was up to 66 million. Yeah,
he was associated with his wife, Mary Ford, and I think they split and that didn't end very well. So maybe that was why some of his net worth somewhat dipped.
That's always what happens, Tim. Fair enough.
But there you go. Well, anyhow, so as you may or may not know, the Gibson Les Paul guitar, as I said, is a solid body guitar. It's got 2 pickups on it, 2 volumes, 2 tones. And it famously comes in like white, black, or as Joy would call it, a starburst design.
I'm going to copyright that. That's now the name.
First debuted in 1952, and it's actually the first one that came out was gold. But, there's been various different ones through the years. I mean, I don't need to go into the guitar geekery of this. I could do an hour on this, but no one's interested in PAF pickups and windings and stuff, bumblebee caps.
Somebody's eyes start switching about halfway through.
Nobody wants that. So what I've done is I have pulled together a list of songs for people who famously play a Les Paul. And I thought it would be interesting just to go through them and see where the conversation goes.
All right.
So I'm going to open, but I thought, well, you can't not open with this. So I'm opening with the man Les Paul himself. And this is a song by Les Paul and Mary Ford. And this is from the 50s. And this is a track called How High the Moon.
I'm very familiar with that track. And I kind of I don't know that I ever knew that so he was married to Mary Ford?
At the time, yes.
I don't think I ever knew that. Huh. Were they married for a long time? Do you even know?
I don't know. I mean, when he fell out or got divorced from Mary Ford, they actually stopped making Les Paul guitars for a while because it was some kind of royalties thing, or I don't know. But no, I think, certainly in the initial heyday of Les Paul, it was always Les Paul and Mary Ford.
Yeah, I mean, I knew they performed music together, like in the 50s. And I know there's another version of How High the Moon that Ella Fitzgerald did a little bit later afterwards. But I guess I just never thought about it. I just assumed they were singing partners. It never dawned on me. Maybe they were married in real life.
And I feel lucky that at the Iridium, I actually got to hear Les Paul play How High the Moon.
Oh, that's awesome. So I think that's one of those songs, and I could be wrong, that is, because like it talks about, somewhere there's music, how far, how near. It's a very pretty song. The darkest night would shine, blah, blah. I feel like that's a song that has been tattooed on many people's bodies. Like,
I would imagine so.
Do you know what I mean? Like those lyrics seem like you could totally see somebody on their shoulder where it would say there's no moon above, no moon above, or somewhere there's music. It just seems like a song that's been tattooed on many people's bodies.
Yeah, it wouldn't surprise me. I mean, I've met people that have Gibson Les Paul tattoos on their body. So the fact that the words to that song would mean something to someone that they want to put it on their body permanently, that wouldn't surprise me.
Well, and I will say, though, there is someone out there, and he does not listen to this podcast, but I will not name names, that did get a Les Paul, and it was on like the bottom of his forearm, like going like Tim can see what I'm talking about right through here. And so the head was here, and then the strings were coming down, on the fretboard, but he moved. And when they were doing it, so his strings were all wonky, and I felt really bad for that person.
Oh, dear.
He had like a very wonky looking string, and I was like, that's unfortunate. That's what you have to be careful of when you get a tattoo. If there's really thin lines, you know what I mean, Tim? Any small little thing you do is going to show up.
Yeah, I think ideally you want to go to a tattoo artist who's recommended, who really knows what they're doing, who would know how to work around that.
Well, this particular person had a friend whose dad was a tattoo artist, but the said tattoo artist had gotten a little older, I think, and maybe just kind of lost some of their skill. But yeah, I remember seeing that, and I'm like, other than that, it looks great, but there's literally no way I would have had it covered up, Tim, if I had to look at the wonky lines for the next 6 years.
See, that's what would put me off. I do not have any tattoos. I've got nothing against tattoos, but what would put me off is there'll be some design that would be really important to me, maybe a Pontiac Trans Am, maybe a guitar. I don't know. It could be anything like that.
Flash Gordon on Tim's back.
Could be. But what would bother me is that there would be an imperfection in it, and it would drive me mad.
That's why my life advice is if you're going to get a tattoo and you're worried about something, not that you have to, and by no means I think Tim's even interested, but if you really want one, but you're scared of what Tim's saying, put it in a place where you can't see it. Put it on your back. You can't see your back.
No, but I think if I was going to have it done, I want it somewhere where I could enjoy it.
That's true, too. I have 2 tattoos, one on my arm, and then I have one on my back. And to be fair, I forget about the one on my back until someone goes, hey, what's that on your neck? And I'm like, oh, yeah, because I have a very big music piece on my back. Mm-hmm. And everybody, though, it's funny, Tim, because you could tell it's people they don't actually know how to read music. And they'll be like, what song is this? And I'm like, it's not a song. Like, you could tell by the way it's written. These aren't real. You know what I mean? Like, there's a treble clef and a bass clef. They see a whole note and like a grandstand. And they're just like, what song is this? And I'm like, well, obviously it's not a song, but it says every song has a story underneath it. It's a pretty big piece. And then on my arm, I have Nevertheless She Persisted, which you can Google that later. We don't need to get into it. But yeah, so I will say, if you do think you want one, but you don't care about having to see it all the time, just like put it on your back. You won't know.
There we are. But then, I mean, some would say, what's the point in getting it done? Because then if you can't see it, you can't enjoy it. So I don't know.
Then you could say you have a tattoo and that makes you cool, Tim. I don't know. I can't answer that question, but anyway. All right, what's the next song?
All right, so the next one, this is probably an obvious pick, but I thought, well, you can't have a Gibson Les Paul episode without speaking about Mr. Slash.
Of course.
Slash, Saul Hudson from the band Guns N' Roses. Well, he was in other bands, Hollywood Rose, before that. But anyhow, Guns N' Roses is where you would know him from, and he's been involved with Revolver and
all those things.
All those kind of things. Slash's Snake Pit. But I'm going to go with the classic Slash and Welcome to the Jungle from Appetite for Destruction.
I was surprised that's the one you went with, Tim, because I thought that was one of the songs you might not want to hear ever again.
No, well, I like Welcome to the Jungle. There's one track on that album I will never knowingly ever hear again.
That's fair. I mean, all I hear of when I think of Welcome to the Jungle is the bring you to your shada na 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 knees. But I mean, it is a great song. I mean, I don't know anyone who hasn't heard that song, and probably they're one of their highest grossing. And if you're going to talk about guitar playing, Slash is a master of this song. Like, it's wonderful.
Absolutely. And the interesting thing is that Slash is so identifiable with that Les Paul guitar. Even if you don't know much about guitar, you would see that kind of instrument around his neck and know that's a Slash guitar.
And I think it's also like he has a very interesting, and maybe it's just me, and maybe because I'm not a guitarist, I'm probably missing something. I like the way he holds his guitar when he plays. He's got a very distinct structure in the way he stands when he plays, on top of, the giant hair and the big hat and the big nose ring that all make him very iconic looking and his playing. But he has like a very interesting posture that I think is different than when I see other people play guitars. And it's not just like when he's soloing, it's completely.
Yeah, he wears his guitar very low slung, which is a classic thing to do when you play that kind of guitar. And yeah, no, you're right. It's just like it's the whole package. It's the low slung guitar, the outfit, the hat, the whole thing. The interesting thing about him is that prior to Appetite for Destruction, he didn't play a Gibson Les Paul. He played BC Riches and Strats and stuff like that. But when they were recording Appetite, he couldn't get the sound that he wanted for the album. And the producer, Mike Klink, gave him or lent him an instrument to play. And it said Gibson Les Paul on it, but it was not made by Gibson. It was made by a guy called Chris Derrick. It was actually a replica copy, if you like. Wasn't even the real thing. And what's interesting, he now owns that guitar. And the interesting thing is Gibson now sell an Appetite for Destruction era Slash guitar, which is a copy of a guitar they didn't even make.
I think that maybe money signs went in their eyes there, Tim. They realized that's where the money's at. That's funny. I mean, well, it worked. I guess it got what they wanted, right?
Exactly. The other thing I like about Welcome to the Jungle is not so much on the guitar side. There's a line that says, you know where you are, you're in the jungle, baby, you're going to die.
Yeah.
That was a quote from a homeless man as Axl Rose, or Bill Bailey, which is his real name, he was getting off the Greyhound bus. He arrived in Los Angeles from rural Wisconsin or wherever he lived. He turned around the corner and there was a homeless guy there. And that line is exactly what the guy said to him. And he either remembered it or wrote it down, and that's what made it in the song.
Do you ever wonder if that guy ever heard that song? Because it was such a big song. He's like, that dude stole my line. Like, starts demanding royalty. How am I supposed to know you're the one guy I met walking off the bus?
I mean, that guy probably didn't even remember saying it. Maybe he said that to everyone that got off the Greyhound bus. I don't know.
If you're from Wisconsin, you're well aware of the one guy who tells you you're in the jungle, baby. It would just be funny, though, if you did say something like that to someone, and then later you see them on TV and they're like a singer and they're performing a song, and you're like, wait a second, I feel like that's exactly what I told you. Like, I just have this image of him like looking up and going, that sounds really familiar. Anyway. I got bit by a bug, Tim. Just so everybody knows, this is a real life injury. I got bit by a bug, I think, while Tim was telling that story.
Oh, no. Is this a second consecutive episode where you've had a live on air injury?
Probably. If you go back and listen to every episode, it's probably like a 30% lineup of episodes where I've like bumped my elbow or something. But yeah, I think a bug bit me right while we were talking.
Maybe what we need to do is make like a best of pack and put it on maybe we could get them pressed up on records. I don't know, some kind of a limited edition thing, and it'll be the Joy's injury series or something. I don't know.
I'll have an injury series, and Tim will just have a thing of Tim's ramblings about guitars.
Well, there's been a couple, but it's a topic I'm passionate about. Joy.
We're very on brand. So, for those who don't know, I currently have a broken foot and a second degree sprain in my ankle, but I have not told Tim this. I got downgraded today. I only have to wear the boot for a few hours a day, and I have to start physical therapy. So I'm on my way to no longer having a broken foot.
Well, that's good. I'm glad that you were on the mend, and I'd like this to be the last major injury for a while. If you could just sort that out, that'd be nice.
I would really appreciate that as well. All right, what's our next song?
Okay, so this one is going a little bit outside the the realm of sort of the rock kind of stuff. And this is Bob Marley and the Wailers, No Woman, No Cry, which of course is a live version. And Bob Marley played a modified Les Paul special, and he plays it on this particular live recording. Now, I'm not a big reggae fan, and I'm not really a massive Bob Marley fan outside of the hits. I do like the hits. That Legend album, the Greatest Hits album, is probably all you need as a casual fan. But it must be said that the live version of No Woman, No Cry really is something special.
Well, and he's really good. I actually prefer his. I am not a big Bob Marley and the Wailers fan by any stretch either, but I have seen quite a few of his like live performances, and he was much more of almost like an artist in the fact that he embodied whatever he was singing. So I've seen No Woman, No Cry. I don't know if this is the one specifically Tim's talking about because I wouldn't have recognized the guitar, but I will say he's one of those people you need to watch live.
Yeah, absolutely. And then of course, in the I don't have a track by the Sex Pistols, but the Sex Pistols, the guitar, I can't think of the guy's name. I should have looked this up, but he, I think it's Steve Jones, I think, famously plays a white Les Paul Custom. But the album, Nevermind the Bollocks, the famous Sex Pistols album, he's playing through an amplifier, a Fender Twin that he stole from Bob Marley's crew.
Well, there you go. Now, when somebody wins Jeopardy from that fact, Tim expects at least a 10% royalty fee. That's incredibly random. Well, remember, was it Bob Marley who had like 3 assassination attempts or something?
I think so, yeah, because I think we covered this on a previous episode.
I did that one episode about like just like weird things, and there's conspiracy theories about the FBI or something. It was my conspiracy theory episode. If you haven't heard it, go back. But yeah, I think there's something about like somebody tried to kill him like 3 different times and he lived. And there was a theory that the FBI was trying to do it. We do not believe this and or endorse this. If you were listening to this podcast, FBI, that is just what the internet said.
There we are. And as we all know, the internet is true, probably, always.
Maybe. I just thought I'd put that in there for clarification. Anyway, but yeah. That's I will say that was probably one of my favorite episodes. If you haven't listened to it, go back. Me and Tim went on a few random tangents for sure.
And not that we ever normally go on random tangents.
What we're talking about, that's every episode. Half the episode is Tim laughing, me laughing, us talking about something random, and then maybe 30% something related to music.
Well, that's the thing. You have to have the topic to bind it all together. It's a binder, if you will.
Exactly. Speaking of which, Tim, what's more on your topic?
Okay. So this one is from 1983. This is Def Leppard from the album Pyromania, and it's Photograph. Now, the reason I've picked this is, I'm not talking about Phil Collen, who we have spoken about before, a gentleman who, as I've said many times, if I had a physique like him, I wouldn't wear a shirt either. That's
going to be put on a t-shirt.
Like if I had a physique as good as his, I would go into Walmart or Target where they have a no shirt, no shoes policy. And they'd say, it's fine, sir. And you come.
Here you can go. You're fine.
Yeah, you're fine. But no, not him. I'm talking about the other guitar player, Steve Clark. Now, Steve Clark was I think he was actually one of the original guitar players in Def Leppard. Originally, it was Steve Clark and Pete Willis. Pete Willis left Def Leppard, and then Phil Collen joined. And so your classic era of Def Leppard, your Pyromania and Hysteria, is what they call. I think they call them the Terror Twins. And Steve Clark famously always played a Gibson guitar, and 95% of that time he would be playing a Gibson Les Paul. He would string that guitar, hang that guitar so low. Like if you look at like Def Leppard's In the Round in Your Face, that guitar is literally around his knees. I don't know how he didn't have severe back problems, but with it that low. But that was like his trademark.
Did he have really long arms?
I don't know. He had a really long guitar strap. I know that.
Like, how is he reaching it properly?
I don't know. But I mean, he played some good stuff, and all of that classic Def Leppard stuff. When you hear them live, at least, he would always be playing a Gibson guitar. So I think Pyromania, he's playing a Gibson guitar on the whole album. But how do you feel about Photograph? Is that an era of Def Leppard you like, or?
Yeah, I mean, I've listened to Pyromania a few times. That would have been like what, early 80s?
83.
83. I mean, It's in the photograph. It's in the photograph of love. But I will say I've never even heard of. Well, I mean, I don't think I've ever even heard the name Steve Clark before. I've heard of Pete Willis. I don't know that I even knew Steve Clark was a member. Was he like a past member?
Well, he was, as I said, it was him and Phil Collin were famously the two guitar players all the way through the Hysteria era, the biggest era of Def Leppard.
I guess I missed that.
And then, but sadly, he had terrible problems with alcoholism, and sadly, it took his life.
Oh, well, I guess I feel bad that I didn't know that, but I've listened to Pyromania a few times, and I think it was Pyromania one of the albums you also had me listen to at one point.
I think so. I can't remember. I've sent you so much music to listen to over the course of this podcast. I've lost count.
Because that's Mr. Robert Mutt Lang, right?
Yes, yeah. He produces Pyromania, and he famously produces Hysteria as well.
That's what I thought. Yeah, I can't imagine. That's somebody who I need to look up their network. It's got to be huge. How many? I mean, I can't. What I would say if we went back and we put into contemplation how many times we said Mutt Lang is on an album or somehow involved in it or even singing in it if you're Shania Twain, or what is one of the other ones we talked about? The guy from Chic, Nile Rodgers.
Rodgers.
Between the two of those, they might be said every other episode.
Well, I mean, because they're icons. They're these amazing talents and icons. And they are people behind the scenes who your casual music listener would have never heard of. However, they're responsible for so much.
Well, that's what's cool, though, is I think I'm more than a casual music listener, but I don't know, I've learned more as we've, done the podcast. I don't think it dawned on me until we started talking about it, how many times these same names come up. So I'm like, it's really interesting. We joke about that. And then the other one is anybody from Swedish pop. That's the other one. Anyone related to Swedish pop. But yeah, I mean, I'm familiar with the song. I had quite a few of their top tracks out there. I guess it was probably Pyromania was probably a number one, I would think, great album for them.
Oh, absolutely. It was a huge album. It wasn't as but Hysteria eclipsed that by a huge degree.
I would think so. Yeah. I mean, it's a good album. I feel like Def Leppard is one of those people, though, that like people either kind of love them or hate them. Mm-hmm. Because they have a very distinct sound, but I could be wrong. We could put a vote up. Do you guys love Def Leppard? Do you hate them? Or are you somewhere's in the middle?
Yeah, they sort of bridge sort of hard rock fans and pop fans to some degree. They're neither either, really. They're not really pop and they're not really hard rock. They're radio-friendly melodic rock, if you like, I suppose.
I mean, just kind of glam rock from the 80s is what I kind of mixed with a power pop thing, I guess.
There we go. I think you banged the nail right on the head.
Darn, I didn't know this was I was doing genres today. All right, what's our next song, Tim?
Okay, well, this is a twofer, and there's a reason for that. So, firstly, it's Fleetwood Mac from 1969 and the song Oh Well, and the guitar player on that is Peter Green. Mm-hmm. Peter Green, again, famously plays a 1959 Gibson Les Paul Sunburst. Okay. And obviously, you're familiar with the track Oh Well. Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Okay. So he obviously recorded a bunch of other tracks. Now, he had suffered from some mental health problems and he got himself out of the limelight completely. He wanted to divorce himself from the world of being out there and playing in a band and being famous. So he knew Gary Moore somehow. And he agreed to sell his 1959 Gibson Les Paul guitar to Gary Moore. And Gary Moore didn't have the money, but Gary Moore had some guitar that wasn't as nice. And he said, well, just sell that and give me what the money is. And it wasn't a lot of money at the time. So he sold him this instrument. Gary Moore played that in Thin Lizzy. He played it all the way through the years. And then he famously, in 1990, played it on the track Still Got the Blues.
Wow. So this was it like when he was famous in Thin Lizzy, and that's why he didn't have the money? Like, was he just like a nobody at the time when he got the guitar?
He was just a musician out there, and he must have been on the circuit or known Peter Green somehow, and that's how he ended up buying it from him. But yeah, it changed. So it changed hands from Peter Green. It changed hands to Gary Moore. Now, when Gary Moore had it, he got involved in a car crash, and it snapped the headstock off the guitar, and it snapped the neck off the body. Now, Gibson Les Pauls famously are very weak at where the headstock is. And most people who have one and gig them a lot likely have a head repair on them, because if it falls off the stand a bit funny or you drop the case a bit funny, it will snap the headstock clean off.
It's the weakest spot.
It's a very weak spot on that design of guitar. But this car crash also broke it body end. So the guy I used to go to in London to have guitars worked on was a guy called Charlie Chandler. And he actually did the repair work on the Peter Green guitar.
I kind of remember something about you saying that once before, but I didn't know about the connection and how he got the guitar. That's cool. And, I wonder if Green was like, one day he's like, that's the guy that I gave the guitar to, or basically gave it to.
Well, I think later on, I was going to come on to what happened later.
Sorry.
Yeah. So anyway, Gary Moore, because we lost Gary Moore much earlier than we should have. I think he had a heart attack. He was on holiday in Spain and he had a heart attack, and he was only in his 60s. But prior to that, I think that he wanted to pay the mortgage off of his house. So he decided he was going to sell the Peter Green guitar. Now, 1959 Les Pauls are incredibly valuable. They are the Stradivarius, if you will, of the guitar world. You're looking at upwards of $250,000 if you find one in good condition.
Okay.
So he wanted to sell this instrument. It had his lineage in it. It has the Peter Green connection, and he figured he was going to get a lot of money for it. And I think he sold it somewhere in the era of around $1 million, and he sold it.
Good Lord.
Anyhow, after it was sold, it was in the hands of a collector for a while. And then Gary Moore died. Gibson made some reissues and stuff like that. Anyhow, this collector had it, or this dealer, I think it was, had it.
Yeah.
And he offered it to a few famous guitar players, and a few famous guitar players didn't want to buy it. And in the end, Kirk Hammett from Metallica bought it. Now, many people at the time said, why does Kirk Hammett have this legendary blues rock guitar that he probably paid $2 million for?
Right.
It's terrible. Kirk Hammett, what are you playing at? But this is the way I look at it. If it had been sold to like some kind of like guitar dealer, guitar collector, guitar enthusiast with a lot of money, where's that guitar going to be? In a bank vault, in somebody's house, and never seen again. Kirk Hammett says it's his favorite guitar. You go and see Metallica, he's playing Greenie.
Well, that's what I was going to say is I'm all for seeing the instrument being used. And wasn't that something that like Les Paul was big on as a whole? Have we talked about that before? Like he said that he didn't want his guitars just sitting around. He'd rather see them used or something along those lines.
Yeah, absolutely. That's why I like Joe Bonamassa. Joe Bonamasa's got 59 Les Pauls and all kinds of fancy, expensive vintage instruments. But yeah, he's a collector, but you go and see him and he's playing those instruments and you're hearing them. That's what they were designed to do. They weren't designed to be put in a case or stashed away. They were designed to be played. So I feel very at peace with Kirk Hammett owning Greenie, and also he accepts the fact that he's only the temporary custodian, because he says one day I'm not going to be around and the Greenie guitar is going to go to someone else. So,
well, I mean, the idea is it's supposed to be there to make music. It's literally there for audio purposes. While it's pretty and nice to look at, it's there to be heard.
Exactly. But there we are. That's a roundabout story about that 1950.
I forgot about the songs and whatever Tim said 20 minutes ago. But I was going to say about him having it for Metallica. It is really random that would be the person who would end up with it. I get people's point. Like, why him?
Well, outside of Metallica music, he's a huge fan of blues and blues rock, apparently. He plays metal for his day job, but his passion is to listen to is that kind of music. Oh, so the fact that he got to own, he has the budget to own it because he's in Metallica. So he wanted to have it. And the interesting thing is they did a concert a little while ago, because I think we lost Peter Green a few years ago, and I think Peter Green was involved in it, or they met Peter Green. Yeah, and he handed the Peter Green guitar to Peter Green and said, "This, I believe this used to be yours." And he went, "No, I don't think so," and handed it back.
That sounds about right.
Yeah, I mean, it was, but I mean, he's had a lot of struggles through the years, and probably didn't remember.
He probably just didn't recognize it off the top of his head. It is kind of funny though that he sold it to him, like, and it was just like, I'll just take that for it, and then it went through that whole story. That's cool.
But there we go. Anyhow, all right, let's move on to another famous Les Paul song. Now, this one is from 1965, the Rolling Stones, and I Can't Get No Satisfaction. And Keith Richards is the one who famously plays that bam, 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 bam riff, and that is played on a Gibson Les Paul.
I don't know. Thinking back when you did that, I don't know that there is any more iconic riff that opens a song as far as the guitar goes in the beginning of I Can't Get No Satisfaction. No,
I mean, it's like you say, it's so identifiable, and it because it has a fuzz tone on it, it doesn't even really sound like a guitar.
Mm-mm. I don't even know that I ever thought about it being a guitar till you just said that, Tim. I mean, I guess I do, but but yeah. It was. Oh, sorry, go ahead.
No, I was going to say, and I saw the Stones in concert, and they played that, but it just didn't sound the same. It didn't have that same bark to it that it does on the track.
Well, I'm sure there's a lot of production that wouldn't have, but that, and then though that, that we were just talking about that opening riff, and then he goes in the I Can't Get No Satisfaction because I try. It's he plays with that when he's doing those like lyrics to that sound. It's kind of almost like an incantation, like I can't get that little rhythm there is so it works so well with that opening track that it's like it builds to the song. But I mean, there's no real like, but then it like the part where he's like, when I'm riding around the world and doing this and singing that, and every little piece of that kind of sounds like that opening riff is what I'm getting at. Yeah. So that's kind of cool. I mean, I'm sure that's on purpose, but I've never thought about it until Tim gave his wonderful rendition. And now I'm like, But that's what I've always said this about the Rolling Stones. And we talk about, I think their lyrics are very deep, but they are I think they have some of the most diverse kind of rock music of any artist. Their songs are intricate. That's what they are, Tim. They're intricate. That's the word I was going for. No, unique. I'm not even going to try to say that again. But their songs are unique and they're detailed oriented in a way that I don't know that you always see with other rock band, kind of mixed with a pop because they kind of got a pop sound too. But I just find it very interesting when I start talking about their music. I notice details that I don't see in other people's music.
Sure, and they're one of these bands. I mean, they're billed as the world's greatest rock and roll band. Yeah, but they're so diverse. They've done sort of funk, they've done pop, they've done rock, they've done rock and roll, they've done blues, they've done rhythm and blues. You can pick songs from across the whole catalog of the Rolling Stones, and you will get almost a piece of everything of popular music.
Yeah, and I think that's probably what it is. I mean, people think of them as hard rock. I kind of think of them as rock mixed with blues, mixed with pop, because a lot of their sound has a lot of I would say a jazzy kind of sound or a blues kind of sound. And I wonder, I've never like looked into it, but I imagine that's probably where a lot of their like influences come from. But like, I mean, you've got I Can't Get No Satisfaction, Get Off My Cloud, Paint It Black. All three of those songs have very diverse. We talked about Jumpin' Jack Flash earlier. Honky Tonk Woman, which has a little bit of kind of like a Southern sound. You Can't Always Get What You Want, which I think has more of a pop sound. Sympathy for the Devil, Give Me Shelter. Like we could go through 1,000 songs, but every single one of those songs I didn't write, that I said. No, I wrote them all. Everybody, that I said have a different sound. Like they all have very distinct, interesting sounds.
Absolutely, 100%. And as I said, it goes with the diversity of their catalog.
Somebody out there going, Joy wrote all those songs. Sure.
Joy, you're incredibly prolific. And I don't know how you've done it, but you was able to write songs before you were born. I don't know how that was done.
Didn't you know that in my past life I was Brian Jones? Kidding. Anyway, yeah. But yeah, I just wanted to say that. I know they were kind of playing on the counterculture rebellious thing of the 60s in a lot of their music, but I just find it very interesting. And I'm not a huge Rolling Stone fan in the sense that I like go out of the way to hear their music. But when I start paying attention, I get it.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Anyway, so there's my theory on the Rolling Stones.
there we are. What do you say at the end? And thank you for coming to my TED Talk.
Thank you for coming to my TED Talk, everyone.
There we go. All right. Well, let's move on to another song featuring the Gibson Les Paul. This is from 1976. This is from Kiss, from the album Destroyer.
Mm-hmm.
And the two guitar players will be Ace Frehley and Paul Stanley, both playing a Gibson Les Paul.
Whoa.
And this is Detroit Rock City.
Which is probably my favorite Kiss song by far.
The version on Destroy, not the single version, the version on Destroy, if you listen to it, it's a whole story. It has like an intro at the beginning with the guy getting in his car, and there's a bit on the radio, and the bit in the middle you hear about the car crash and the whole thing. It's a whole rock opera piece, if you like. So
I have heard that they said that it was not made on, like, there was no specific real life incident that inspired the lyrics in Detroit, but there was another car accident. It wasn't in Detroit though. But I haven't read much about it, but there was something that they had saw at some point that it did that whole thing. But Tim's right. They're really playing on the rock opera thing here. I mean, but I just love the opening, I feel uptight on a Saturday night, 9:00, ready to rock. I will say, I'm not a huge Kiss fan. I like some of their songs, but they're not like a band I got out of the way. But this 70s Kiss is probably, this kind of sound would be my favorite. And this is from Destroyer, right? The album?
Yeah, absolutely.
That's probably my favorite if I had to pick one of Kiss.
Yeah, I like Love Gun. I like I Was Made for Loving You.
That's my other favorite.
Yes. But I do like their I think it's 97 or 98 album Psycho Circus. But I think I may have spoken it before. When I was in Perth, Australia in 1998, they were in town performing. Now, I didn't see them. I think they were there before or after, but all the local radio stations were talking about how Kiss were coming to town. They were playing the Kiss songs from Psycho Circus. So I don't know. I thought there was some good music on there and what have you. So I was in a record shop in the shopping center, and I bought Psycho Circus. And to be honest, for years it was the only Kiss album I owned. And I listened to it. And to this day, I really like it. I think a lot of the hardcore Kiss fans don't rate it. But I don't know. I really like it.
I'm not super familiar with it because, like you're saying, it's not like part of their greatest albums that most people would know. I will say I do like Shout It Out Loud as well. I could never hear Beth again and I'd be completely happy.
That is completely understandable.
I mean, I don't know why. For some reason, that seems to be everybody's default because, it's their sappy love song, different from what they're known for. But I could skip that one for the rest of my life and it would be fine.
I like God Gave Rock and Roll to You, and in particular, the version on the Bill and Ted's Bogus Journey soundtrack. That is the definitive version of that. I really is. I really like it. And there's a line in it. It says, and it was God has given you a gift. He's given you a role, and that role's name is rock and roll.
I know exactly what you're talking about, Tim, and that's fantastic. I will say, in the eras of Kiss, most of the songs I tend to like are like Stanley Simmons kind of written songs. I will say that. For whatever reason, those tend to be the ones that I go for. Of course, they wrote probably the most songs, so maybe that's why.
Yeah, the interesting thing about Kiss is that, it's basically a money-making machine with a band tagged on it. And,
it really is.
And they are not shy about using other musicians in the studio, even like Gene Simmons, who's famously the bass player in Kiss. There are tracks that he doesn't play bass on because for whatever reason he wasn't in town or whatever, but they're not shy about that. And said really the whole thing is just a huge money-making operation.
I mean, they know what they're doing. I mean, they never claim to be like, I feel like the one thing I will give them credit for is they know what they are. You know what I mean? I will say Ace Frehley, though, so I don't know how much you paid attention to Gene Simmons now. He says a lot of crazy stuff. And like the media, it does a lot of weird things and just have you heard anything from Ace Frehley? Does he do the same thing? I don't know.
Well,
I
what
haven't really
happened?
seen anything.
Yeah, what happened is that Peter Criss and Ace Frehley, who were the original drummer and guitar player in Kiss,
Yeah.
I think they parted ways with Gene Simmons and Paul Stanley. I don't think it was particularly a good parting, but they bought them out. So they completely bought them out of Kiss, and they weren't allowed to use the name, and they owned all the songs, et cetera, et cetera. And then many years later, after that Unplugged gig, which I think was in the 90s sometime, Kiss got back together with the original members and did a tour. And when they joined them, they joined Kiss back as employees, not as a member of the band. So they were paid a salary for their time, not as a member of the band.
Yeah, that might not have went over too well.
But Kiss are currently on their big farewell tour. I think that they were in Australia, and then they've gone to South America.
I bought tickets to them 3 years ago. I remember talking to you about it, but I don't remember why I didn't. I think like it snowed or something, and I didn't get to go.
That's it. Yeah. I think that was the one. But yeah, they're touring everywhere. They're touring the whole world on this big farewell tour. And some people have asked Gene Simmons in interviews, "Would you ever get Ace back? Just for the last few dates?" And like you say, he says stuff that's you probably shouldn't say that. Just let it be, Gene.
Yeah. Well, he also just says like wacky things. Like if you've ever watched him in an interview, the weird things that come out of him, it's like, where the heck did that come from? It's kind of like me saying I wrote all those songs for the Rolling Stones. I'm kidding. But no, he just says weird things. If you've never seen any of his interviews, I would definitely go watch them because you'd be surprised. But I will give him this. The members of Kiss know exactly that they're there to put on a show. And that's what they do.
Sure. It all comes from apparently when Gene and Paul were first starting out. They used to love The Who. They used to love the Beatles. They used to love Zeppelin, all these great bands, and they'd only ever listen to their records. And eventually they went to see them. And what did they see? They saw a bunch of dudes standing on a stage wearing jeans and T-shirts. And they said, I was not expecting that. I was expecting superheroes. I was not expecting people that look like me. I was expecting cartoon characters and superheroes and all this kind of stuff. And that's where the whole stage act comes from, because that's what they expected when they saw The Who, and that's what they expected when they saw the Rolling Stones.
That's how we got the Catman and the Spaceman. Exactly. I will say, Peter Criss has the best makeup of all of them. The cat was my favorite.
Oh, absolutely. And in fact, when they were bought out the Kiss empire, I think those designs were copyrighted. So if you go and see Kiss now, whoever the guy's playing drums has the Catman makeup.
Oh, I'm sure. That's sad, though, because Peter Criss, when you see pictures of him like in the 90s, he ends up looking like John Lennon. I don't know if you've seen a picture of him recently, but he looks like John Lennon.
I had not made that connection, but it wouldn't surprise me.
Like he wears like John Lennon glasses. He's got John Lennon hair. He's got that kind of like laissez-faire look, Just reminds me of John Lennon. I don't know what you're doing out there, Peter Criss, which is not his real name. His real name's like George something. Do they all go by different names? I'm assuming they do. I doubt his real name's Ace.
No, I think it's Paul. I think it's Paul Fraley is his real name.
Yeah, that sounds about right. There's a Family Guy sketch where he's talking about, people who play instruments and they change their names. And he's like, Alicia Keys. There's no way she's a pianist and her last name was Keys. He's like, that's like me being Tommy Guitar. And then he went, oh, wait, no, I want to be Tommy Guitar. It's true, though. Like, I'd never thought of Alicia Keys. And then I'm like, now I want to know what her real name is. Anyway, another Family Guy reference for everyone.
The question is, here's a challenge for you, Joy.
Okay.
Can you tie Kiss back to Glee?
Yeah. They did an episode where it was, they did a Kiss episode. So what it was something about doing a larger than life something. And the girls did Lady Gaga, but the guys were like, I'm not interested in doing Lady Gaga. So they did Kiss. And they were in full makeup and everything.
That's fantastic.
Yeah. And then Glee, there's actually in Family Guy, there's a whole episode about Kiss. And he gets so they're at the concert, and Peter brings Lois with him, his wife, and everybody's singing, and everybody gets really quiet. It's like, wanna rock it, and the mic goes out on Lois, and she doesn't know the lyrics to "I Wanna Rock and Roll All Night." What is it she says? And part of every day or something instead of party every day. And they made fun of her. But then at the end of the episode, Lois knows all the members of the band, and they're all like, "Oh my God, Lois." And Peter's like, "You know them, but you don't know their music?" She goes, "Yeah, they're cool guys. I just didn't like their music." Anyway, so yeah, I can relate it to both, Tim. And I'll find a picture of Glee and their Kiss outfits. We'll put it up on the Instagram for this episode.
There we go. Fantastic. We'll tie the whole thing together.
It goes full circle.
Excellent. All right. Well, let's do a couple more of songs that were played with a Gibson Les Paul. So here we are. This is from 1983. The guitarist is Billy Gibbons, or Billy. I think it's Billy F. Gibbons. The F doesn't actually stand for anything. Talking about stage names. And this is from their album Eliminator. And this is a song, Got Me Under Pressure. Now, I didn't want to pick out Legs or any of the standard stuff. But this was played on a 59 Les Paul that he calls Pearly Gates.
Well, speaking of people who have very iconic looks, I don't know anybody else who's got more of an iconic look.
Yeah, Billy Gibbons, the beard and the thing and the thing. Yeah, and it's the only thing I'd say about Billy Gibbons. I saw ZZ Top in Roanoke, and I may have told this story before. Yeah. They play, as is a lot of bands do, they play to a click. So the keyboards and sometimes backing vocals and sometimes sequence stuff is on a track. And a lot of bands do that. But they play their live instruments and they sing live vocals and they play to the synth backing. Some bands do that. It's just how it is. When I saw them, Billy Gibbons had his lead vocals on the backing track, and he was lip syncing all the way through it.
I mean, how old would he have been? Maybe he lost his voice somewhere.
He was 60s probably, but I don't know. I'd rather hear him in medium voice and hear it for real, because it was too perfect. That was the problem. And he kept going on about how he had a cold or something, and then you go to do the song, and it's like, this sounds perfect. And then when I went on YouTube, I found a few performances from that tour. Yeah. And I started the songs at the same time, and the vocal track was identical.
See, and I was watching, so you know how there's some artists who famously don't sing live? Mm-hmm. Like a good example is Britney Spears. She hasn't sang live since the 90s. We all know this. But at least she's open about it. So if you go to a Britney Spears concert, you know what you're getting, right, Tim? Mm-hmm. I would rather know if I'm going to hear you sing or if I'm going to hear your backing track sing before I buy the tickets. Because they're two different shows. Like Britney's known for her kind of stage show. It's less of a music thing and more of almost like a, dancing and all that. So you know what you're getting. But like when you go see somebody like ZZ Top, who's known for their bluesy and their kind of soulful sound, you imagine they would be singing. It's kind of like their MO.
Yeah, and that's what disappointed me. Yeah. And I came out, and also the show was not that long. It was like an hour and 20 minutes or something. And maybe I'm spoiled because McCartney does 3 hours and Springsteen does 4 hours and Joe Bonamassa does 2.5 hours. And they did like an hour and 15 minutes. I was like, is that it? I mean, it was good.
The worst feeling.
Yeah, we had good seats. We was like 3 or 4 rows from the front, and it was, we could see everything. Mm-hmm. But honestly, it was, I don't know. I would not make any effort to go and see them again.
If the tickets were free and they were next door, Tim would go. But if he has to pay and drive anywhere, it's just not going.
I'll go for free and see them, but I wouldn't pay to see them again. Not if the lead vocals are going to be on track.
Yeah, that's a little weird. That's kind of like, and there's some like diehard ZZ Top fans, right? Like it's like a cult classic.
Yeah, absolutely.
So I feel like they would be very disappointed to hear that. Like I've heard of people who are obsessed. My mom's a big ZZ Top fan. I wouldn't say she's like a big fan, but she loves, she wouldn't be like a cult classic type person, but she does love ZZ Top. So I grew up listening to it a lot. And for me, that the rugged sound with the bluesy is not something you want to hear on a backtrack. End of story.
No, absolutely not.
All right. Well, that was sad. And if either of the members of ZZ Top listen to our podcast and would like to come on and defend themselves, please let us know. We would love to have you.
Exactly. There we go. All right. So I'll do two more before we close this episode out.
All right.
So this is from 1977 from Neil Young, and it's his famous protest song, Ohio. Now, he plays a Gibson Les Paul. He plays a Gibson Les Paul Deluxe, which he's changed some of the pickups around. And it's a very famous old battered guitar. And it's a black guitar, and he calls it Old Black.
I mean, he's right on brand. If it's black, and call it that. I haven't heard that song Ohio in a long time. That's kind of a random choice, Tim.
Yeah, I mean, I was having this discussion with Neil Young with someone today.
With Neil Young. Yeah. Well, I was writing the Rolling Stones song.
Yeah, me and Neil, we were talking about how his Pono player flopped. You know, we were just hanging out. No, I was having this discussion with somebody at work about Neil Young. And the thing is, he's like at the borderline of not being that good and great songs. Because like some songs he sings, his vocal style is actually a bit ropey. And some of his guitar playing is incredibly sloppy. But out of that slop, there is some great songs like Ohio. Now, if you actually break Ohio down and listen to it on a technical level, it's not really good. But it's such a great song, and it is, you know, the soundtrack of a particular moment in time, and it's the ultimate protest song, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera.
So I would say for me, when I think of Neil Diamond, there's one particular song we won't mention because no one ever wants to hear it again, of course. I feel like he's a better songwriter than he is a performer.
Yeah, he's certainly from that Bob Dylan school of musicians, I think, where his songwriting is the main vehicle, and maybe the performance is the secondary thing. I mean, I'm sort of bashing on him a bit because, I mean, you know, the guy can play. And it's fine, but
he has somebody to move his gear for him.
He does indeed, and he plays better gigs than I do. But I mean, if you can compare the technical skill of, let's say, Neil Young playing guitar with, I don't know, Slash, like we talked about earlier. One Slash again, he's kind of a feel player, a roots kind of player, but he's very precise with his note choice and his tuning and his vibrato and stuff. Whereas Neil Young tends to be a little more sloppy is maybe not the right word, but free.
I think what you're talking about that camp of like, there's like, it's almost like a folk sound kind of like the Bob Dylan kind of thing, or maybe like Hurricane, like that kind of sound, or even some John Lennon songs have that campy kind of sound. I don't know. And it's not that, I don't know if it's sloppy as much as you're saying, it's less technical, but for me, people like Bob Dylan, Neil Young, these artists we're talking about, it's about the songwriting that I think is what makes them. So my probably favorite Neil Young songs would be Cracklin' Rosie, maybe, or
I like Needle and the Damage Done. I also like Ohio, like the one that I picked out.
Cherry. It's a good one. And then America, I think, is one of the best songs. Like that's like a political song that's ever been written. Because I'm not big on that kind of thing, but I do like that one.
Yeah, he was very much an activist, and I think he still is, and writes a lot of political based songs like that.
He tried to come out with a song not that long ago. Oh, what was it? It was something political. He did like a political song maybe during our previous presidency's reign. I can't remember exactly, but he did something. We'll have to look it up. I'll try to find it and send it over to you, Tim. But yeah, he did another, and I just remember it because it's him like walking with a crowd of people, and it was a protest song, but I don't remember what they were protesting.
Okay.
But it was pretty recent.
Yeah, he's still out there getting it on. I remember, do you remember when Conan O'Brien had the Tonight Show for a very brief period of time?
Yeah.
It was either on the last show or the last few shows. Apparently, Neil Young didn't like the way that NBC treated him. So he appeared on the Tonight Show and like kind of said, he said, you know, a friend has been in touch and, you know, he's been very supportive all the way through this. And he really wanted to come out and do a song. So ladies and gentlemen, Neil Young. And we're like, what?
Where did this come from? I mean, you wouldn't think about Conan O'Brien and Neil Young just hanging out on the side every day. It's kind of a weird mashup.
Neil Young's an old dude. He's probably just sitting back on his sofa at 11 p.m. and he's put the TV on. It's Conan. He's a funny guy. I like him.
He doesn't have to work in the morning. He can stay up till midnight.
Exactly.
All right. Well, now that we've discussed Neil Young at length and did not discuss the song Ohio really at all, what is your other choice, Tim?
Okay. Well, I'm going to close out with a song which is horrifically overplayed. Well, however, I'm going to mention it anyway, from 1976. This is Boston. From the album Boston, the guitar player is Tom Scholz, who is a certified genius when it comes to making guitar effects and production and studio and all that kind of stuff. And the song is More Than a Feeling.
I had a feeling this is where it was going. I will say, though, that's one that I still can hear. Like, it doesn't, like, I don't cringe when it comes on. I'm not going to go out of my way to hear it, but I don't, like, you know what I mean? I don't shut it off instantly.
No, I'm with you. It is one of those tracks on US rock radio that is legally has to be every third song.
Oh, 110%. And I mean that More Than a Feeling has probably been used in 1,000 movies and soundtracks. And I don't know any other song that, like, it's very high, though, for the singer of Boston has a wonder. What is his name?
Brad Delp.
I couldn't think of it off the top of my head. Brad has an amazing range. For what it's worth, that's not an easy song to sing. And what happens, and Tim can testify to this, that is one of those songs that if you play in a lot of local bands, especially maybe around in Southwest Virginia, it gets played a lot, that people think they can sing it, but they can't. I'm sorry, but it's true because it's a very high song. It's a very, and it requires you to be able to hold, you have to be able to sing in your head voice and hold those notes for a very long time at a very high range. And I hate to say this, for a lot of males, that's incredibly hard to do to begin with.
Yeah, it's the sort of thing. If you're in a cover band, I think if you had a female singer in a cover band whose voice is typically a much higher, especially when you're singing in a band, I think it's something that would suit a female-fronted band much better, actually.
It is, because it's almost like, so what happens is when you have to pull your voice up, because he has a voice that it doesn't sound like he's singing from his chest. He's got a very solid voice. It doesn't sound like he's singing from his head, and that's literally the terms, guys. I'm not making that up. It sounds weird, but it's true. But so it doesn't feel, but for most people who would try to sing that from their chest, they'd pull and you'd hear that pulling. It's very hard to keep up there. Whereas someone with a high pitched voice like mine, it might be much easier to sing.
Sure.
Not to say that I'm out here singing this song all the time, because it's a song I don't really listen to, but not like, unless Tim says, unless I'm listening to rock radio and then I'm legally obligated to hear it every 30 minutes. And I will say, though, back in the day when I was obsessed with Rock Band, where you did like the singing, and the playing the instruments and stuff like that on the Xbox, I did do a mean rendition of More Than a Feeling. I got expert every time.
Joy, I'm so proud of you.
That and Rebel Girl by Bikini Kill. Priorities right there. That could have been a more opposite song choice. Rebel Girl by Bikini Kill and More Than a Feeling by Boston.
Well, as we've discussed before, you're speaking to somebody who had Neneh Cherry and Guns N' Roses on a cassette tape on each side. So, I mean, if you like it, it's fine. We
really need to revisit at some point the top 5 songs where we scribble our playlist and see what comes up, because the Paris Hilton on mine about sold the whole episode. Because it went The Clash, and then Tim's like, okay, that's cool. And then I said Paris Hilton. He was like, what? Anyway, and with that, if you guys have not heard Paris Hilton's The Stars Is Blind, I suggest you go listen to it.
There we are. A late episode tip of the week there from Joy.
All right, bye.
See you later. Bye-bye.